It is my 65th birthday. The dining room is filled with warm lights, flickering candles, and the clinking of glasses. A golden balloon shaped like the number 65 sways slightly in the corner. On the table in front of me rests a small, ordinary brown envelope. To anyone else, it would look like nothing. To me, it carries a weight as heavy as my entire life because it hides a secret I have never spoken aloud. My son David stands with a glass of wine in his hand. It has been 3 years since he last sat at a family gathering with me. He raises his glass, and for a moment, I think he might finally honor the father who raised him. But his lips twist into a cruel smile. To my father, he says loudly, his voice cutting through the chatter, a man who's worked his whole life, yet owns nothing, and will never own anything. The room bursts into uneasy laughter. Some family members chuckle politely, others glance down at their plates. My chest tightens. I feel the sting of humiliation crawl across my face. He looks at me, daring me to respond. But I remain silent, my hand brushing against the envelope beside me. The envelope carries a faint scent of lavender, the same perfume my late wife used to wear. She sealed it herself years ago, her handwriting still etched across the flap, for when the time comes. Seeing her handwriting tonight on this day after my son's public humiliation feels like she is whispering to me from beyond. The gap between David and me stretches like a canyon. I raised him for over 20 years, worked double shifts, sacrificed everything so he would never go hungry. And now he looks at me as if I'm a burden and embarrassment. My heart pounds. Betrayal has a way of aging you instantly. I sense danger in his words, not just tonight's cruelty, but something darker, something brewing. Perhaps he has plans, perhaps he has already taken steps I don't yet see. I glance down at the envelope again, my fingertips tracing the seal. Tonight, it might finally be time. The laughter fades, replaced by silence. My eyes meet David's across the table, and I know one thing for certain. This is not the end of my story. It's only the beginning. And that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The clinking of glasses fades, but the sting of David's words lingers in the air like smoke. I can still hear his voice echoing, "You'll never own anything." I want to dismiss it as a tasteless joke, but the way he smirked tells me otherwise. He didn't mean it to be funny, he meant it to hurt. The room grows awkward. My cousin fiddles with her fork, avoiding my eyes. My brother coughs loudly as though to break the silence. Even David's wife, Hannah, leans in close to him and whispers something, her lips curling in satisfaction. I notice it all. When humiliation comes, it rarely travels alone. I force myself to breathe steadily. My father once told me, in moments of shame, silence is stronger than anger. I remember that tonight. But silence also sharpens pain. My son's words are not just about property or wealth. They cut deeper down to my very identity. After all, what is a man who at 65 is mocked by his own blood for having nothing? I glance again at the brown envelope on the table, its edges frayed with time. It looks fragile, unimportant, yet I know what it contains could turn everything upside down. Still, I resist the urge to reveal it now. Timing, I've learned, can be more powerful than truth itself. David raises his glass again. Let's not pretend everyone, he says with a mocking laugh. Dad's been working all his life, but what does he have to show for it? Nothing. Not a single thing in his name. His words are sharp enough to slice the birthday cake untouched before me. Hannah chuckles, though she hides it behind her napkin. My chest tightens, but I keep my face still. I think of an old folk saying my mother once repeated, "A crow will mock its own nest before it learns to fly." Perhaps David is the crow, but I am still the one who built the nest. Inside, though, I feel the tremor of betrayal. How long has he carried this resentment? Has he been waiting for this moment? I sip water slowly, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. My silence makes the room heavier. Eyes shift, forks scrape against plates. Conversations resume in hesitant fragments, but David watches me closely, almost daring me to prove him wrong. I say nothing, not yet, but I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. Later that night, after the guests drift away with their forced smiles and half-hearted goodbyes, I retreat to my room. The house feels heavier than usual, as though the walls themselves absorbed the cruelty of my son's words. On the small wooden desk by the window lies the brown envelope, the same one I kept my fingers on during dinner. It looks ordinary. A plain paper shell, a little wrinkled at the corners, sealed with a strip of aging glue. But to me it is no ordinary thing. It has been my silent companion for nearly 2 decades, hidden away, waiting for a day I hoped would never come. I pick it up and the faint lavender scent brushes against me again. It stops me for a moment. Lavender was my late wife's favorite fragrance. She used to press sprigs of it into books, tucking them between pages so that years later the scent would surprise me. When she sealed this envelope, she dabbed her perfume onto the flap. Even now, long after her passing, her presence lingers in this paper. My hand trembles slightly as I trace the handwriting on the front. Her script is delicate, elegant, and unmistakably hers for when the time comes. I have asked myself countless times, when exactly is the time? Should it be when I fall ill, when I cannot provide for myself anymore, or when betrayal finally shows itself in the face of the child I raised? Tonight after David's toast, the answer feels clearer than ever. I slip the envelope into the drawer beneath a stack of old receipts and faded photographs. My instincts whisper to leave it there a little longer, because once it is opened, everything will change. As I sit in the quiet, I recall an obscure custom I once read about from a rural village in Eastern Europe. Families there used to bury deeds of honor beneath the foundation of their homes, handwritten promises, vows of loyalty, or property claims. They believed the house would collapse if those papers were ever stolen. It seemed strange then, but tonight I understand it. Paper can carry the weight of a family's soul. I lean back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Betrayal from strangers is a wound. Betrayal from blood is an infection. It seeps slowly, poisoning everything. My son's words were not random. They were a warning of something bigger. The lavender scent lingers. I whisper to the envelope as if to my wife, not yet, but soon. Silence answers me, but silence has its own way of speaking. The morning after my birthday, sunlight pours through the curtains, soft and golden. It should feel warm, comforting. Instead, it feels like a spotlight exposing everything I want to keep hidden. I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of bitter black coffee, staring at the steam as though it carries answers. Before the storm of last night, life was simpler. I think back to when David was a boy. He used to cling to my hand whenever we crossed the street, his small fingers gripping mine with blind trust. I remember the day he built a wooden birdhouse in middle school. He insisted we hang it in the yard together. Back then he looked at me as though I could fix anything. But trust, I've learned, is like glass. Once cracked, it never shines the same again. Somewhere between then and now, the cracks spread. Maybe it started when his mother passed, leaving just the two of us. Maybe it was when he married Hannah and her ambition slowly became his. Or maybe it was me working too much, speaking too little, failing to notice when his eyes hardened. I run my hand across the kitchen table. The wood is scratched with years of use, but sturdy. It reminds me of a fact I once read: oak tables, if cared for, can outlast generations, some even 200 years old. Families pass them down scratched but unbroken. I wonder if I've managed to pass anything down to David besides resentment. I reach for the old photo album stacked on the counter. The leather cover creaks as I open it, releasing a faint smell of dust and time. There's David at 8 years old, holding up his first soccer trophy with a grin wide enough to light the whole street. Another photo, the three of us at the beach, his mother's scarf whipping in the wind. Her laughter, frozen in that picture, is the same laughter I hear whenever I catch the lavender scent. How did we get here? How does a child's love turn into scorn? Perhaps every family carries seeds of betrayal planted long before we realize. Some seeds sprout slowly, watered by ambition, by envy, by greed. The door creaks open, and for a moment I think David has come back, but it's only the wind pushing through a crack. The silence afterward is heavier than words. I close the photo album, gently placing it on the table as though it might break. My chest feels hollow. The storm hasn't yet arrived in its full force. Last night was only the first rumble of thunder, and storms never warn you twice. The next evening, as twilight settles over the neighborhood, I sit alone in my study. The house creaks softly, every sound magnified by solitude. I'm sifting through the desk drawers for an old notebook when I notice something strange. The small brass key that usually rests in the velvet corner of the drawer is gone. It's a tiny thing, barely the length of my thumb, but I've kept it there for years. That key opens the metal box beneath the floorboards in my bedroom, the one that holds papers no one else is supposed to see. My pulse quickens. For years I've told myself the box is safe. Few even know it exists. Now the absence of that key gnaws at me. Did I misplace it? Or did someone else find it? I sit back in my chair, unease pressing down on me. My late wife once warned me, it's not always the loud betrayals that hurt the most. Sometimes it's the quiet hands in the dark. I search the drawer again, pulling out receipts pens, even an old wristwatch with a broken strap. No key. My heart beats harder. That box contains the original deed, the one with my name etched in black ink. Without it, I would have nothing to defend myself against David's accusations. I close the drawer and glance toward the window. Outside, the streetlight flickers, casting long shadows across the yard. Shadows that seem to move when I'm not looking directly at them. A foolish thought maybe, but tonight every detail feels heavy with meaning. I recall an obscure superstition from the countryside where I grew up. Losing a key was considered a warning not of burglary but of betrayal from within the family. If a key leaves the house, the old saying went, so does trust. I used to laugh at such things. Now the memory chills me. I lock the study door and sit in silence, straining to hear the faintest sound. A whisper of movement upstairs, a floorboard sighing under weight, or maybe it's just the house settling. But unease lingers. I tell myself it could be nothing. Still, something inside me whispers otherwise. This missing key is no accident. It is the first crack in the dam. And when the dam breaks, the flood doesn't ask permission. 2 nights later, I find myself seated at a crowded dinner table in David's home. Hannah insisted I come. Family should stay close, she said, her smile tight, rehearsed. I agreed, though part of me wondered if I was being led into a trap. The table is long and polished, set with shining silverware that catches the light of the chandelier. David sits at the head wearing a suit that looks new. Hannah flutters about with serving dishes, her earrings glinting like small daggers. Around us, relatives chatter politely, but their eyes dart toward me as though waiting for something. I sit quietly in my old blazer, the same one I've worn for years. Its elbows are a little threadbare, but it's comfortable, familiar. I take comfort in the way it still smells faintly of cedar from my closet. Then David clears his throat. "Dad," he says suddenly, loud enough to silence the room. "Why don't you show everyone those shoes you're so proud of?" I glance down. My shoes, plain black leather, scuffed at the toes, soles a little worn. Shoes that have walked me through decades of work, through hospital corridors when my wife was sick, through every milestone of David's life. "They're older than me, aren't they?" David sneers, his voice sharp. A ripple of laughter escapes from Hannah and then from 1 or 2 cousins who don't know better. The blood rushes to my ears. Shame burns in me, but I force myself not to flinch. The room seems to shrink, their faces all turned toward me. My shoes suddenly feel like an open wound. I think of an old fact I once read: leather, if cared for, can last a lifetime, sometimes even outlive its owner. In museums, centuries-old shoes have been unearthed still intact. Yet here at this table, my shoes are not seen as resilience, but as failure. I lift my chin. These shoes, I say softly, have carried me farther than you know. Silence hangs heavy. Some look down at their plates, ashamed. But David only smirks, sipping his wine as if my words meant nothing. In that moment, humiliation presses against me like a tide. But tides, I remind myself, always turn. I stay silent, swallowing the bitterness. The room fills with awkward clinks of cutlery. But inside I know this isn't just cruelty. This is strategy. He wants to break me in front of everyone. But I won't give him that. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The dinner lingers on each bite of food, tasting like ash in my mouth. Laughter returns in scattered waves, but the atmosphere never fully recovers. I push a piece of roast potato around my plate, my mind racing faster than my fork. From the corner of my eye, I notice Hannah lean close to David. She whispers something, her hand covering her mouth as though her words are precious jewels to be hidden. David's lips curve into the faintest smile, not the warm smile of a son, but the sly grin of someone who believes he holds all the cards. The whisper stirs unease in me. I've lived long enough to know that silence can scream louder than words. What is it they're planning? I sip from my glass of water, pretending not to notice, but my ears sharpen. Hannah places her hand gently on David's wrist, the way one might restrain a dog just before letting it loose. They exchange a quick glance toward me, thinking I don't see, but I do. A memory flashes years ago when David was a teenager. He and his friends whispered in the back of the house. I ignored it, trusting him. Hours later, I found the shattered remains of my late wife's vase in the yard. His silence back then had been the same, secretive, dismissive, defiant. My stomach knots. This isn't about shoes or even about pride. Something deeper is moving beneath the surface like currents in a dark river. I recall an odd cultural detail I once read in some rural Japanese households. When a family member whispers too often, behind closed doors, elders place a small bell above the doorway. The ringing exposes every secret exit, reminding everyone that walls have ears. I almost wish for a bell tonight. The clatter of cutlery jars me back. A cousin asks Hannah for more wine, breaking the moment, yet my eyes linger on the two of them. My son, my daughter-in-law, partners in something I can't yet name. The envelope at home flickers across my mind, lavender-scented, sealed by my wife's hand. My safety net, my weapon, still hidden, still waiting. I straighten in my chair. They may think me frail, diminished, but they forget silence is not surrender. Silence is a blade sharpening itself in the dark, and soon enough I will need to draw it. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The following morning, I find myself pacing the narrow hallway of my house, still unsettled by the whispers I witnessed the night before. The air feels heavier, as though the walls themselves carry secrets I haven't yet uncovered. As I walk past the front door, something catches my eye. A plain white envelope lying on the floor slipped in through the mail slot. No stamps, no handwriting, just blank. I stoop to pick it up, my knees stiff from years of wear. The paper is crisp, too clean, too deliberate. I tear it open carefully, and inside I find a single sheet of paper. Typed words, neat and cold. You don't belong in that house. You don't belong in any house. No signature, no explanation, just those cruel lines. My hands tremble slightly. This isn't a prank, it's a message. Someone wants me out and they want me to feel powerless. I sit down on the steps, the paper shaking in my grip. For a moment, I remember the day I first held the deed to this house decades ago. My wife and I had just finished signing the papers. She kissed the ink on my hand, laughing, saying, "This house will carry our story long after we're gone." That memory is a shield, but right now even shields feel fragile. I glance toward the corner of the hall where my coat hangs. In its pocket, the key should be resting, the very key that vanished from my desk drawer days ago. I check again, almost desperately. Nothing. The emptiness feels like confirmation someone has been inside my home. The paper crumples in my fist. I can't help but think of an old superstition my grandmother used to tell me: finding a letter without a sender meant the dead were trying to speak. That thought unsettled me as a child. Now it feels like betrayal has taken on a ghostly form, haunting me in my own house. I flatten the letter again and lay it on the table. Its words glare back at me, merciless. I whisper aloud to the empty room, "You want me gone." But even as I say it, something inside me hardens. They may want me out, stripped and humiliated. But they have underestimated the one thing they cannot take from me, the truth written in ink, sealed years ago, waiting in silence. And when silence speaks, it does not whisper, it roars. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. By the third day, the letter's words no longer feel like paper. They feel like footsteps echoing through my house, loud and unshakable. I cannot keep pretending I don't see the direction all this is heading. That evening I call David. My voice is steady when I ask him to stop by. He arrives with Hannah, her perfume trailing behind her like a warning. They sit across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where he once did his schoolwork. Crayons scattered everywhere, his handwriting clumsy and full of hope. I slide the anonymous letter across the table. "Do you know anything about this?" I ask. My tone is calm, but every muscle in my body is taut, ready for whatever comes. David glances at the paper for only a second before leaning back in his chair. He smirks, that same smirk he wore on my birthday, the one that tells me he enjoys watching me squirm. "Dad," he says, voice dripping with false sympathy, "you're being paranoid. It's just some junk, maybe from a neighbor. You shouldn't get so worked up. At your age, stress isn't good for you." Hannah presses her manicured fingers over his hand as though she's the puppeteer and he the marionette. Her eyes gleam sharp and cold. "He's right," she adds sweetly. "You should focus on resting. Let the younger ones handle things." Her words cut deeper than David's. Handle things, as if my life, my home, my name are all things to be handled by someone else. I press on. The key is missing, the one from my drawer. For a fraction of a second, David's expression tightens. Then he laughs. "Dad, you probably misplaced it. You forget things sometimes, don't you?" It's normal. The room falls silent. His laughter still lingers, but beneath it I hear what he doesn't say. We've already taken what we needed. I clench my fists beneath the table. My late wife's voice echoes in my memory. Don't meet cruelty with rage, meet it with patience. Let them reveal themselves. So I sit back, forcing a small nod. "Maybe you're right," I say softly. "Maybe I'm just imagining things." But my silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. Every word they've spoken tonight confirms what I already know. The betrayal is no longer creeping in shadows. It's standing right in front of me, smiling, holding my son's face. As they leave, Hannah squeezes my shoulder gently, like a mockery of affection. "Don't worry. she whispers, her breath warm against my ear. We'll take care of everything. I stay seated long after the door closes. The house hums with emptiness. Silence has its own way of speaking. The days that follow unravel like threads from an old coat. Each morning brings another sign that David and Hannah are tightening their grip. One evening, I return from the corner shop to find David waiting in the driveway. He leans against his car, arms crossed, looking not like a son visiting his father, but like a landlord surveying his property. "Dad," he says, his tone casual but edged with steel. "You should start thinking about moving out. This house is too big for you, too much for you to handle at your age." I stop in my tracks. The bag of groceries hangs heavy in my hand, though it's just bread, milk, and apples. "This is my home," I reply evenly. "Your mother and I built our life here." He smirks. "Your life maybe, but not your house, not really." My chest tightens. The words echo the cruel toast he gave at my birthday. "You'll never own anything." Now it's no longer a jab in public. It's an open threat. I unlock the door, step inside, and set the groceries on the counter. He follows without asking, his footsteps claiming the floorboards as though they already belong to him. Inside the living room, he gestures toward the family photos hanging on the wall. Pictures of birthdays, graduations, holidays. His voice is calm, almost rehearsed. "You know, Dad, it'd be easier for everyone if you signed over the place now. Think about it. You wouldn't have to worry about bills, taxes, repairs. Hannah and I could take care of it all." I study him, the way his jaw tightens, the way his eyes flicker toward the corner of the room where the safe once stood. He isn't offering help. He's making a demand. My silence makes him restless. He paces, then stops in front of me. "You're holding on to something that isn't yours. You should just let go." The room seems colder, though the heater hums. My late wife's handwriting flashes in my memory for when the time comes. I meet his gaze steadily. "This house is mine," I say, "and until I take my last breath, I'm not leaving." For a moment, a crack shows in his composure. His mouth twists. His eyes flash with anger. Then he exhales sharply and forces a laugh. "You'll regret that," he mutters, brushing past me toward the door. When the door slams, the house trembles as though it knows what's coming. I sit down heavily in my chair, my hands gripping the armrests. The betrayal is no longer whispered, no longer hinted at. It's here, full-grown, standing in my own living room. And it's only just begun. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. A week later, a cream-colored envelope arrives in the mail. Unlike the blank letter before, this one bears a law firm's name embossed at the top. My stomach knots before I even tear it open. Inside is a summons. I'm requested to appear at a lawyer's office downtown regarding a matter of property ownership. The words blur as I read them. Property ownership. My home, my wife's lavender, my memories, my life. The following day, I dress carefully, the same blazer David mocked at dinner, and take the bus into the city. The law firm's office is sterile, all glass and chrome, the air too cold. A receptionist leads me into a polished conference room. The smell of coffee and paper hangs in the air. David is already there, seated comfortably at the table. Hannah sits beside him, her posture perfect, her lips curved into a polite but victorious smile. Across from them sits a lawyer in a gray suit, flipping through a folder. "Mr. Turner." The lawyer greets me, his voice formal. "Thank you for coming. We need to clarify some issues regarding the deed to your property." My pulse hammers. He slides a document across the table toward me. I unfold it and freeze. It's a deed. My house, my address, but the name printed at the bottom isn't mine. It's David's. I stare at it, my hands trembling. This isn't right. That's not the deed." David leans back, his arms crossed, smirk etched deep on his face. "Dad, maybe you're confused. Paperwork is complicated. You probably don't even remember when you signed it over." The room spins. My chest feels tight, as though all the air has been sucked out. I never signed anything. I never would. Hannah folds her hands delicately. "We just want what's best for you. It's time to let the younger generation take responsibility." Her words are syrup laced with venom. I point to the signature line on the document. My name is there, scrawled in ink, but not my hand. "That's not mine," I say, my voice rising. "That's a forgery." The lawyer clears his throat awkwardly. "We will, of course, verify authenticity. But, Mr. Turner," he looks at me carefully, "these papers are filed already. It may be difficult to contest." Filed. The word slams into me. They've already moved against me. I sit back, clutching the arms of my chair. Betrayal has left shadows in my own son's face, shadows I no longer recognize. But beneath the panic, a spark ignites the memory of the envelope, the lavender scent, the original deed hidden away all these years. They think I am defenseless. They think their forged papers will erase me. They are wrong. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. When I return home from the lawyer's office, the house feels different. The walls, once my sanctuary, now seem like witnesses to a crime in progress. Every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of wind under the door feels like an accusation. I sit at the kitchen table staring at my hands. They tremble slightly, not from weakness but from rage restrained. My instinct is to storm back into David's house, slam the forged deed in his face, and demand he stop this madness, but I don't. Because I remember my wife's words spoken years ago when David was still just a boy. Never fight fire with fire. Let silence do the work. Let truth wait until the moment it matters most. So I breathe. I fold the letter from the lawyer, carefully placing it beside the brown lavender-scented envelope that still waits in my drawer. The two papers sit side by side, one a lie, one the truth. The difference between them is the difference between ruin and survival. I make tea, letting the kettle whistle long before pulling it from the stove. The sound fills the house, masking the silence I now treat as my ally. Later, I walk through the rooms, slowly touching objects as if they're old friends. The oak dining table scratched by years of family dinners, the worn armchair where my wife used to sit knitting the framed cross-stitch sampler above the hallway that reads, "Home is built on trust." The irony nearly makes me laugh. Trust is what my son has stolen from me, perhaps forever. But even in betrayal, I find my weapon. Silence is not weakness, it is preparation. I recall a curious fact I once read in a psychology journal. When people argue, those who remain silent are often perceived as having the upper hand, even when they don't. Silence unsettles aggressors. It makes them wonder what hidden strength lies beneath. So when David calls the next day, casual, almost smug, to ask if I've come to my senses, I simply say, "We'll see," and nothing more. The silence afterward stretches, and I can almost hear his frustration over the line. That small victory soothes me. My resistance will not be loud. It will be quiet, steady, unshakable. I will not shout. I will not plead. I will wait, and when the time comes, my silence will thunder louder than his lies. Silence has its own way of speaking. It is a gray Saturday afternoon when the knock comes. I expect no one. I rarely do these days. When I open the door, I find my granddaughter Emily standing there with her school bag slung over one shoulder. Her hair is tied back loosely, her eyes bright but shadowed with something she doesn't say right away. "Grandpa," she whispers, glancing over her shoulder as though she's being followed. "Can I come in?" Of all my family, Emily is the only one who still visits without Hannah's orchestration. She slips inside quickly, and I close the door behind her. She doesn't take off her shoes, doesn't sit down right away. Instead, she clutches her bag to her chest like it holds her very heartbeat. Finally, she pulls out a folded piece of notebook paper. Her hands tremble as she passes it to me. Written in her hurried handwriting are just 5 words. "Check the deed. Trust no one." I stare at the note, my throat tightening. "Emily," I murmur, "why are you giving this to me?" She bites her lip, eyes darting to the window. "I heard Dad and Mom talking. They said it won't be long before you're gone, Grandpa." They laughed. They talked about selling the house, about how the paperwork is already done. But then Dad said something about making sure the real one never shows up. The words land like stones. My heart aches, not just from betrayal, but from the innocence in Emily's voice. She shouldn't have to carry this, yet here she is, braver than all the adults in the room that night. I take her hand gently. "You believe me, don't you?" She nods quickly, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes. "I know you, Grandpa. You're not lying. I don't care what they say." A wave of warmth and grief floods me. Out of the ashes of betrayal, here stands my ally, young, unbroken, uncorrupted. I tuck the note into my pocket, feeling its weight. It's flimsy paper, but in my chest it feels like a shield. To steady her, I tell a small story. "Did I ever tell you about the iron keys in old castles?" She shakes her head. "They were so big, so heavy, the guards could barely carry them. But do you know what they used to say? The bigger the key, the heavier the trust. And whoever held the key decided who was safe inside." She listens closely, nodding. I realize then Emily has become my key, not just to the house, but to hope. We sit in silence for a moment, and I feel my wife's presence again, as if she's watching us both. For the first time in weeks, my chest eases. I am not completely alone. And with Emily's warning, I know the time is coming to open the box beneath the floorboards. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. That night, long after Emily has gone home, her words echo in my mind. "Check the deed. Trust no one. Sleep does not come easily. I lie awake listening to the house breathe the groan of wood, the sigh of pipes, the restless shiver of curtains in the draft. Every sound feels like a reminder time is running out. At midnight, I rise. The floorboards creak beneath my steps as I cross into my bedroom. I kneel beside the old oak dresser, the one my wife and I bought second-hand decades ago. Its drawers are heavy, stiff, reluctant to open, but I know its secret. Behind the bottom drawer, hidden where no casual eye would look, is a small compartment. My fingers trace the edge of the wood until I find the notch, then press firmly. The panel shifts with a soft click. There it is, the metal box. Dust clings to its lid and the iron handle is cool against my palm. My heart pounds as I pull it into the dim glow of the bedside lamp. The box is plain, battered by years, but unyielding. I pause, remembering a peculiar detail I once read in certain European monasteries. Monks would keep chests of silence boxes that contained vows, confessions, or promises too dangerous to speak aloud. They believed those boxes carried divine protection. Looking at mine, I feel the same. It carries not only ink and paper, but my last defense, my wife's final gift. I reach for the small brass key. Of course it's missing. Stolen. I grit my teeth. But my late wife was wise. She anticipated everything. On the underside of the dresser, taped carefully, is a second key. My hands shake as I peel it free. Her handwriting is still there on the old strip of masking tape, for him if he forgets. The key slides into the lock, stiff at first, then yielding with a reluctant turn. The box creaks open. Inside lies a neat stack of papers preserved in plastic sleeves, and there at the very top is the original deed, my name, my wife's name, bold, undeniable. Relief floods through me, though it is tinged with sorrow. She knew this day would come. She trusted me to wait for it. I lift the deed carefully, tracing the ink with my fingertip. Around me, the silence deepens, heavy and watchful. Then suddenly, the house speaks. A floorboard creaks in the hallway, slow, deliberate. Someone else is here. My hand freezes on the deed. The shadows at the doorway stretch longer, darker. And in that moment, I realize the box may no longer be a secret. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. I clutch the deed in my hands, the paper trembling, though my grip is steady. It feels both fragile and indestructible at once, a single sheet that carries the weight of decades, the weight of every sacrifice my wife and I made. My name written there in bold ink is like a heartbeat, echoing from the past, proof that I am not nothing, proof that I belong. I slip the remaining documents back into the box, locking it again with the spare key my wife left for me. Her foresight saves me yet again. I tuck the key into my pocket, closer to my skin, as if proximity alone could protect it. The floorboard in the hallway creaks again. My breath catches. For a long moment, I do not move. Then, gathering courage, I rise and step quietly into the hall. The shadows loom, stretching thin under the pale glow of the streetlight leaking through the curtains. But the hallway is empty. Still, I know what I felt. Someone has been here. Someone might still be here. I return to my room, sliding the deed into a leather folder. I hold it against my chest, whispering softly, "You thought you erased me. But here I stand." To steady my mind, I remind myself of a fact I once read. The oldest property deed ever discovered dates back more than 4,000 years, etched on clay tablets in Mesopotamia. Paper fades, ink blurs, but the truth of ownership when recorded survives generations. Tonight, mine has survived betrayal. And yet the relief I feel is fleeting. The danger is not gone. It is closer than ever. If David forged documents once, he will not hesitate to strike again. If Hannah pushed him toward this path, she will not stop until she sees me broken. I sit at the edge of my bed, deed in hand, the lavender scent still faint from the envelope where it once lay. My wife's presence hovers around me, steadying me. She left this proof not only as defense, but as defiance, a promise that we would not be erased. A gust of wind rattles the window, startling me. For a second, I imagine David's face pressed to the glass, smirking. But it's only branches swaying in the night. Even so, my body stays tense. I slide the deed under the mattress for now, a temporary hiding place. But I know hiding is not enough. Sooner or later, I will have to place it before their eyes, undeniable, unshakable. And when I do, the laughter that humiliated me will choke in their throats. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The opportunity arrives sooner than I expect. A week later, David and Hannah invite the family to their house for Sunday dinner. The invitation itself is strange. It carries the tone of a victory lap rather than hospitality. Still, I go. I carry the leather folder tucked beneath my arm, hidden inside my worn blazer. The dining room is crowded when I arrive. The table groans under the weight of food, roast chicken bowls of potatoes, dishes of greens. Laughter hums through the room, but it is sharp practice, not the laughter of warmth. I take my seat, quietly observing. David stands, wineglass in hand. Before we eat, he begins, "I'd like to make an announcement." His voice swells with triumph, his chest puffed with arrogance. "Hannah and I are taking steps to secure our future. Soon this house," he gestures grandly around his dining room, "won't be our only one. We'll be moving into a place that carries more history, a place some of you know well." Murmurs ripple across the table. My pulse drums. He doesn't say my name, but he doesn't need to. Everyone knows whose house he's talking about. A cousin whispers, "He can't mean—" Another shakes her head in disbelief. I feel the blood rising in my ears, but I remain still. Then I set down my fork and slowly pull the leather folder from my blazer. The motion draws eyes, silences chatter. I lay it gently on the table, my hand firm on top. David frowns. "Dad, what are you doing?" I look at him steadily. "You've spoken enough. Now it's my turn." I open the folder and slide out the deed, its paper crisp, despite its age. My name gleams on the ink like fire. I place it in the center of the table, pushing it toward him. "This," I say, my voice low but sharp as the truth. "This is the house you claim is yours, but look at the name. It is mine." The room erupts. Gasps, mutters the scrape of chairs as relatives lean in to see. Aunts and uncles whisper to one another, eyes wide. David's face drains of color, then flushes deep red. Hannah stiffens beside him, her nails digging into his arm. "You're lying," David snaps, though his voice cracks. "This is fake. You're trying to trick everyone." I lean forward. "If it's fake, then let the ink speak. Let the notary's seal speak. This deed has lived in silence for years, waiting for the day you would try to erase me." The noise swells, accusations, defenses, shock, bouncing from wall to wall. The family is no longer an audience. They are a storm. David slams his glass onto the table, wine spilling like blood across the white cloth. "This means nothing," he shouts, his eyes wild. But the paper sits there, calm, undeniable. And in that moment, I realize the louder his rage, the closer I am to the truth tearing him apart. Silence has its own way of speaking. The room vibrates with tension. Voices overlap. Relatives gasp, some demand explanations. I sit silently watching the storm rage around the single sheet of paper that has silenced years of doubt. David's hands tremble as he snatches the deed from the table. His fingers crumple its edges. "This is worthless," he yells. A piece of paper doesn't mean anything. But I see the fear in his eyes. It's the look of a man caught in his own trap. Hannah leans close, whispering urgently into his ear. Her eyes flick toward me, sharp and venomous. Then David does something I never thought my own son capable of. He tries to tear the deed in half. Gasps echo around the table as he grips it tightly, pulling hard. The sound of paper straining under his hands cuts through the noise. For a moment, I feel as though he's not just ripping paper, but tearing at the very fabric of our family's history. "Stop," my cousin shouts, half rising from her chair. I slam my palm down on the table. The crack of my hand against wood startles even me. "Enough." My voice is louder than it's been in years. "That paper is stronger than your lies, David. Tear it if you wish. I have more than one copy." The words aren't entirely true. The deed in his hands is the original. But my confidence makes him falter. His grip loosens and he freezes, staring at me. His face twists with rage, but behind it doubt blooms. I straighten, meeting every eye in the room. This isn't just about a house. This is about truth, about honor, about the family your mother and I built with our hands, and you would destroy it for greed. Silence spreads. Some relatives shift uncomfortably. Others nod in quiet agreement. For the first time, David sees the tide turning against him. I recall a curious fact from history during medieval disputes. Peasants often carried tokens, seed stones, or scraps of parchment as proof of their claims. When challenged, they would lift these small objects high, daring anyone to deny them. Tonight, my deed is my token, and it carries more weight than all his bluster. David throws the paper back onto the table. It lies there wrinkled but unbroken. His chest heaves. Hannah grips his wrist, her nails whitening against his skin. "You think this proves anything?" he spits. "You think anyone will believe you over me?" But I see what he doesn't, the faces around us, the shifting eyes, the murmured judgments. Doubt is no longer on my shoulders, it is on his. For years I have been silent, patient, enduring. Tonight silence has ended. Tonight I strike back. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The air in the dining room is thick, heavy with accusation and disbelief. The deed lies wrinkled on the table, a fragile battlefield between truth and betrayal. David glares at me, his breath ragged, his hands clenched into fists. Hannah sits stiffly beside him, her lips pressed tight, her eyes darting nervously at the watching relatives. Then a voice clears from the back of the room. It is Mr. Callahan, my neighbor of 30 years. I hadn't even noticed him slip into the gathering invited by one of my cousins who thought I'd need someone impartial. He is tall, thin, his hair white as snow, his eyes sharp behind his glasses. "I know that paper," he says, firmly stepping forward. "I was there the day it was signed." The room falls silent. David's face twitches. "You're mistaken. You're old, you don't remember." But Mr. Callahan doesn't flinch. "I remember because I was the notary. Your father and mother signed this deed in my presence. My seal is on that document. I placed it there myself." He points to the embossed stamp at the bottom of the page. The family leans closer to see murmuring. The faint raised letters catch the light undeniable. David stumbles over his words. That could have been added later, forged." "Impossible," Mr. Callahan interrupts, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "The seal was registered in county records. If you check the archives, you'll find it matches exactly. That deed is genuine." Gasps ripple around the table. The ground beneath David shifts. I can see it in the panic flashing across his eyes. Hannah grips his arm, her nails biting into his sleeve, silently begging him to stop digging deeper. I close my eyes briefly, inhaling. The relief is sharp, almost painful. For weeks I have carried this truth alone, doubted, humiliated, stripped of dignity. And now, in front of every doubting relative, the truth stands tall with a witness to hold it steady. I remember an obscure detail from Roman law in property disputes. One witness of unimpeachable standing was considered stronger than 10 forged documents. The voice of honor outweighed the weight of ink. Tonight, Mr. Callahan is that voice for me. When I open my eyes, I meet David's stare. He looks at me not as a son looks at his father, but as a man looks at the wall he cannot climb. "You see," I say quietly, "truth doesn't need to shout, it only needs to endure." The room is so quiet I can hear the ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece. But deep down, I know this battle is far from finished. Desperation makes people dangerous, and my son is not done fighting. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The storm of voices from dinner carries long into the night. Relatives leave in clusters, whispering among themselves, some casting sympathetic looks my way, others shaking their heads in disbelief at David's audacity. By the time I return home, the house feels like a fortress again, my deed hidden safely under my mattress. But peace doesn't last. 2 mornings later, a knock rattles my front door. Firm, measured, not the knock of family or neighbors. I open it cautiously and find 2 police officers standing on the porch. Their uniforms are crisp, their expressions unreadable. "Mr. Turner," the taller one asks. "Yes," I reply, gripping the edge of the doorframe. "We need to speak with you about some documents that have come into question," he says. His tone is polite but heavy. "Specifically, the deed to this property." My stomach sinks. So soon, David has moved faster than I thought. They step inside, their radios crackling faintly. The shorter officer carries a file. He opens it and slides out copies of the forged deed, the one David presented at the lawyer's office. "Your son claims you may be in possession of falsified records," the officer says carefully. "We're here to verify." I nearly laugh, though there's no humor in it. My son accuses me of forgery. My voice trembles with anger. He is the one who forged my name. The officers exchange a look, professional but not unsympathetic. "Do you have evidence to support your claim?" Wordlessly, I walk to the bedroom. My legs feel heavy, as though each step is weighed down by betrayal. I reach under the mattress and pull out the leather folder. Inside rests the true deed, the one with my wife's lavender scent still clinging faintly to its paper. I hand it to the officers. This, I say firmly, is the original, witnessed, sealed, authentic. They examine it carefully. The notary's seal gleams under the light. One officer nods, murmuring, "This matches county records. The date, the signatures." Relief flickers in me, but it is fragile. The taller officer closes the folder gently. "We'll need to take both versions for official verification. If your claim holds, Mr. Turner, your ownership will be secured. If not," he leaves the sentence unfinished. As they leave with the documents in hand, the house feels emptier than ever. I watch their patrol car pull away, my heart pounding. I think of an old saying my grandmother used to repeat. "When wolves fight over meat, even the bones are broken." That's what this has become, not just a fight for a house, but a battle where family tears itself apart. The silence after the door closes is suffocating. The deed is no longer in my possession, and for the first time I feel truly exposed. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. It doesn't take long. 2 days after the police visit, I receive a call from the county office. Both deeds have been examined. Only one holds weight, mine. The forged document collapses under scrutiny. For a moment I feel triumph, a breath of justice at last. But victory has sharp edges. That same evening, there's a pounding on my door. Not a polite knock, but an angry hammering. When I open it, David stands there, face flushed, eyes bloodshot. Hannah lingers behind him, her lips pressed into a thin line, her silence more poisonous than words. "You think you've won?" David spits, stepping inside without invitation. His voice cracks with rage. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You made me look like a fool." I steady myself against the arm of the chair, meeting his gaze. "You did that yourself." His fists clench. He's no longer the boy I raised. He's a man cornered by his own greed, dangerous because he has nothing left to lose. "You could have just let it go," he shouts. "We were going to take care of everything. You don't even deserve that house. You don't deserve anything." Hannah finally speaks, her voice sharp as glass. "We gave you a chance to step aside gracefully. You should have taken it." I glance at her, then back to David. Grace doesn't come from surrendering to lies. Grace comes from standing in truth, even if it breaks your family. For a moment, the room vibrates with silence. His chest heaves, his face contorts, and then the mask cracks. His knees buckle and he sinks into the chair opposite me. His shoulders shake, his hands gripping his hair. "I just wanted something of my own," he mutters, his voice small, almost childlike. "All my life I've watched you work, struggle, sacrifice. And what did we have? Nothing. I wanted more. I wanted it faster." My throat tightens. This is the son I know, not the monster, but the broken boy beneath. Yet the damage is done. "You could have asked," I whisper. "You could have trusted me. Instead, you betrayed me." He looks up, eyes wet with fury and shame. "I thought you'd never give it to me. I thought you'd take it to your grave." My hand brushes against the folder now returned to me by the police, the true deed within. I place it on the table between us. But this time, I do not push it forward. "This house is not just wood and stone," I say slowly. "It is your mother's laughter, your childhood footsteps, every sacrifice I made, and it will not be stolen." The room is thick with unspoken words. Hannah turns away, her face pale. David covers his face with his hands, a man undone. And I thought weary, no, the fight has reached its breaking point. The truth has been laid bare, and truth once exposed cannot be buried again. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. When David and Hannah finally leave that night, the house feels eerily still. The echoes of their voices seem to cling to the walls, lingering long after the door has shut behind them. I sit alone at the table, staring at the folder with the deed inside. It lies there like a survivor of war, wrinkled, scarred, but unbroken. News travels quickly through families, faster than wildfire. Within days, cousins call with hesitant voices asking if what they heard is true. Aunts send clipped messages, half curious, half ashamed, forever believing David's lies. Neighbors glance at me differently when I step outside, as though wondering how much of the scandal is true. And then the whispers start. At the market, I overhear two old women clucking their tongues. Imagine one says a son forging his own father's name. The other sighs. The poor man must feel like his heart's been stolen. They aren't wrong. The betrayal doesn't just bruise. It brands. Every glance from a relative, every murmur from a neighbor carries the weight of what David tried to do. My humiliation has turned public. I sit in the living room one evening, gazing at the family photograph still hanging on the wall. There's David grinning with missing front teeth at age 7. There he is at graduation, arms thrown around me in triumph. I trace the glass with my fingertip aching. How does love sour into greed? A silence grows inside me, heavy but instructive. I realize something painful. The house is safe, but the family is fractured. Trust once broken cannot be pieced back together with signatures or seals. I recall an obscure fact I once read in ancient China. Fractured porcelain cups were repaired with gold lacquer, a practice called kintsugi. The cracks were not hidden, but highlighted, made part of the object's story. Perhaps family works the same way. Betrayal leaves scars, but those scars can still shape meaning. Still, the ache of humiliation lingers. My relatives avoid looking me fully in the eye when we meet. Their silence says everything. They once doubted me. They almost believed David, and now they don't know how to face me. As night falls, I sit in the armchair by the window, the same place my wife used to knit. I imagine her voice steady and kind. The storm has passed, but rebuilding takes time. The storm may have passed, but the ruins remain. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. Days pass, then weeks. The scandal no longer blazes like fire but smolders in every corner of my life. Family gatherings shrink to whispers. Invitations no longer come. The phone rarely rings. Silence wraps itself around me like a heavy cloak. At first, I welcome it. Silence has been my weapon, my shield. But slowly, I realize silence can also be a prison. One night I sit alone at the kitchen table, the deed once more spread before me. Its ink is steady, its truth undeniable, yet despite my victory, I feel no triumph. The paper proves what I own, but it cannot restore what I have lost. The laughter of my son, the warmth of his hand in mine as a child, the sound of my wife's voice, urging patience, those things feel impossibly distant now. A gulf stretches between the man I raised and the man who tried to erase me. I think back to something I read once in a medical journal. Loneliness in old age carries the same health risks as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I never paid much attention before. Now the fact stings like truth. Betrayal hasn't just taken my peace, it threatens my very body, my very years. On the third week, the silence breaks. Emily appears again unannounced with her school bag over her shoulder. She bursts into the house, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with determination. "Grandpa," she says breathlessly, "don't just sit here alone. Don't let them win like this." Her words cut through the gloom. She sits beside me, her small hands clutching mine. The warmth of her skin jolts me, a reminder that I am not entirely forsaken. I whisper, "Emily, everything's broken." She shakes her head firmly. "No, they're broken. You're still standing." Tears sting my eyes unbidden. My silence finally shatters, not with anger but with grief. I tell her everything about the missing key, the forged deed, the humiliation at dinner, the police, the confrontation. She listens wide-eyed, her grip never loosening. When I finish, the house feels different, lighter. My voice lingers in the air like smoke, but it is no longer suffocating. It is cleansing. Emily squeezes my hand. "Grandpa," she whispers, "don't let silence be the end of the story." In that moment, I know she is right. Silence had carried me this far, but to move forward, I must break it. The truth cannot just be endured. It must be spoken, lived, shared. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. Emily begins visiting more often after that night, slipping in after school with her backpack still hanging from her shoulders. Sometimes she brings me small gifts, a drawing, a packet of tea, a book she borrowed from the library. But her greatest gift is simply her presence. She fills the silence with laughter, with questions, with the uncomplicated loyalty of youth. One evening, she finds me sitting in the living room, staring at the photographs on the wall. Without a word, she slips onto the armchair beside me and takes my hand. Her fingers are warm, steady. For the first time in months, I don't feel like the ground beneath me is collapsing. "You're not alone," she says softly. "Even if the rest of them forget, I won't." Her words settle deep into me. I glance at the photo of my wife, her smile frozen in time, her scarf blowing in the wind. My chest tightens with both grief and gratitude. Somehow Emily has become the bridge between past and present, between the family I once had and the family that remains. We talk long into the evening. She tells me about her friends at school, about a project she's working on, about dreams she has for the future. I listen, truly listen, and realize something important. Betrayal can strip you of many things, but it cannot erase love where it still exists. I remember a curious cultural detail I once read in some African villages. When a family fractures, the elders gather the youngest members around a fire. They believe that the innocence of youth keeps the flame of unity alive even when the elders falter. Tonight, Emily is my fire. Later, as she prepares to leave, she hugs me tightly. "Grandpa," she whispers, "I don't care what they say. I know who you are. I know this house is yours." Her conviction steadies me more than any legal paper ever could. When the door closes behind her, I sit in the quiet, the warmth of her embrace still lingering. I realize the circle of family has not vanished. It has simply grown smaller. Tighter, perhaps that is enough. It is. The lavender scent from the old envelope drifts faintly again, though I know it is only memory. My wife once told me blood doesn't make family. Loyalty does. I finally understand. And so the circle closes not with the many but with the few who remain true. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The weeks roll into months and the sharp edges of the conflict begin to dull. The courts confirm what I already knew. The forged deed is void. The original stands unchallenged. On paper, I have won. Yet victory feels like ash in my mouth. The house is mine, yes, but the family I once dreamed of filling it with laughter and warmth is fractured. Relatives avoid my gaze when we meet at the market. Some still whisper, not daring to choose sides. And David, my son, my own flesh and blood, has disappeared into silence, his pride too wounded to return. On quiet evenings, I walk through the rooms alone. The oak table bears its scratches proudly. The photographs on the wall remain, though they feel heavier now. And sometimes when I catch a faint trace of lavender, I imagine my wife walking beside me, reminding me that even in ruin, truth must endure. Emily still visits. Her presence keeps the house alive. She brings light into rooms that would otherwise sink into shadow. With her, I learn to forgive in fragments, not because betrayal deserves forgiveness, but because my heart cannot carry bitterness forever. I reflect often these days. Betrayal, I've realized, is not the end of love. It is the test of it. And though my son has failed that test, my granddaughter has passed it with a courage beyond her years. In her, I see the possibility of a future that is not poisoned by greed. I think of an old saying I once read: "The house does not remember the storm. It remembers only who returned to shelter in it." My house remembers Emily. It remembers loyalty. It remembers truth. And as I sit in the armchair by the window, I whisper to myself, not with bitterness, but with quiet strength, I survived. I endured. I still belong. The storm is over now. And though the wounds will never vanish, they are part of my story, proof that truth, though tested, cannot be erased. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe and continue with the next story in the playlist.